Welcome back.
Yeah, how are you doing, Kate?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am good.
So now we have some people that we know are listening to our podcast. It's so exciting.
I know it's kind of weird to to have people listening in on us, but
Mhm.
that was the point. That was the point
Right.
is to get that going and have people um be looking forward to hearing what we have to say. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think maybe we can even take a few steps back and explain kind of how we decided to do this podcast. I know we spent a little time introducing ourselves and how we are connected to rowing in different ways, but maybe we can talk about kind of the ideas we had for the podcast and, who we might ask to join us and, talk about that.
Yeah, I think that, I think we wanted to have a space where we could talk about rowing, where we could share some ideas. Of course, I have my physical therapy clinic, and you're doing college advising. So, we were thinking that we could combine those ideas and chat about those things in relationship to rowing. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
and just kind of how rowing, and I know you said this in like I think the first podcast that we did that rowing is life and life is rowing, but like the idea that so much of who we are today is because of how we see the world, because of the things we've learned through rowing, like how it really connects to a lot of leadership qualities, wellness qualities, just things about having a very fulfilling and positive outlook and, just, all that good stuff. Because I think this place that we have carved for this podcast is both of us are very positive people.
Mhm.
We're here to have fun, to
Yeah.
chat, keep it light, but also, try and help people have a good day and have a positive outlook and learn about rowing and maybe grow the sport of rowing in some ways, open the doors for rowing for people who don't know about the sport, who
Yeah.
want to get involved, who want to learn, who want to get connected and have a community. And rowing is probably one of the most positive communities that I can think of that I've been part of. So,
Yeah, and I think it's also important too to bring people back into rowing. I always think of the idea of like return to row. We always do learn to row, but I feel like there is a big space out there for return to row, because it's a time-consuming sport, and a lot of times once you have a spouse and some kids and work, like rowing becomes one of those things that like you did in the past but don't necessarily do anymore. So having this opportunity to chat rowing, maybe it will inspire some people who have rowing experience to get back at it and to find out where their local club is and start participating in some of their activities, even if it's just on a recreational level, just to be out on the water again. So I love the idea of return to row. I just think that's just a great way to get people to get back into the sport too.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think, having that kind of appreciation for part of is also brought us together, right? Like you be
Mhm.
rowing, that's how we met, and that's how we met so many of our good friends and just people that we are connected with through rowing and different things, and just how sad it is that that team doesn't really. Well, we don't know. Like we're
Yeah.
still trying to figure
We're
this
trying to
out. This is
figure
our
it out. I
second
still haven't
podcast.
heard anything. I will have to reach out to the person that I know who's currently there and see if she has any more information and see if she could maybe join us and let us know what the status of the team is and like you're saying, like we wouldn't know each other if we didn't row. And so like it's such a gift like that whoever started that team and had it moving forward, like I mean all of those people who are connected now who wouldn't have been connected. I mean, we weren't in the same major, so we probably wouldn't even have crossed paths,
Right.
so it was an opportunity to really like meet people from all over the university and just from all over the state and the country. And I mean it's an amazing thing that rowing can do. It can bring people together. So um Yeah, yeah. It hopefully, fingers crossed that UB rowing is well and is bringing people together the way that it brought us together too.
Yeah, and we shared this podcast once we released it on our alumni Facebook page. And so we're asking anybody who is listening that has found us through that, if you know anything, reach out to us. If you want to join us for a podcast, reach out. We've had some people give us some nice positive messages, and might be in touch soon. See if we could have some guests on this. It'll be fun.
I know that would be wild to get the crew back together per se. I'm hoping that maybe we can convince some of our boat mates. Maybe we'll
Mhm.
have like a special boat mates podcast and where we bring on people who are like from our time there, and then it would be cool to talk to other people who participated at different times too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because there's a lot of people who were from UB Crew who are often doing things in the rowing world right now, and that's just a testament to like how special UB is and how special like rowing is. Like, pe once people learned about the sport, they wanted to stay in it. They wanted to give back. They wanted to be a part of their local teams and high school coaches. We've got high school coaches, we've got college coaches, we have Paralympian.
Hmm.
Like we've just it's amazing all the people who are connected, and it all goes back to having rowing at our college. So
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
super important.
the other thing we talked about when we put this together is that we're differentiating ourselves here. We're not claiming to be Olympians, past Olympians, or
Mm-mm.
you definitely have that aspect where you can definitely teach us things about rowing that we might not know. But, we're not claiming to be experts or to even invite people that are, doing rowing at the highest levels, unless they happen to be connected in some way or want to share some great stories about, their rowing friends and their rowing connections. We're really here to give that other more lighthearted side to this.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of two middle-aged women who are moms that
Yeah.
have, I have kids that are rowing, you have kids that are doing sports, and,
Mhm.
we're living busy lives, but we're still connected in this sport too.
Exactly. And I think that's what's kind of special about our podcast is that, we're not former Olympians, like and we can give kind of that everyday rower experience, which I mean, not to discount any other podcasts that have like, these really phenomenal high level
Yeah, I listened.
rowing people in them. Like, little, that's amazing. Like, there's definitely a space for that. But I feel like there's also a space for this where you're talking about a sport that you really love, that you continue to do because it's good for your fitness. And I think it helps with the accessibility of it because I think a lot of times when people think about rowing, they think about that high level and people competing like that. And it doesn't have to be like that. And I think what's really cool is like when it's not necessarily about the racing, what it's really about like being on the water and like, it's just good for your mind. It's just an amazing sport because it has like that mind body connection to it. And I know you've probably like you go out, you row, and then you'll stop and you'll just kind of sit there and the boat will be gliding along. You're just like, this is like such an awesome way to like get a workout. Like
Yeah.
it's different than like, being out and running or being on a bike or something like that. It's so unique and so special. And I love it. So
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think I appreciate that more now that I don't have to be like so focused on training for like a specific race or anything. My connection with rowing right now is to enjoy it as much as I can when I'm out there. And we have teammates, we have masters who are a little bit more serious about it these days. We're not a big team, so we kind of all have to work with each other in terms of like we might have different goals, different abilities, different, things that we're ready to do. But I think for the most part, we're there to have fun, we're there for the community, and we're there, to get some good workouts in. But we're the competition aspect. I mean, we only have practice typically 3 days a week. We're not like an everyday practice kind of team.
Mhm.
Um, so if we compete, or expectations are pretty realistic, I think.
Yeah, and oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I
Yeah,
was just gonna say, and it's really just like I do have those moments now more than I did when I was, in college or, rowing in high school even, just to appreciate, the beauty on the water. We'll stop and appreciate, the blue herons and the bald eagles, and I
yeah.
mean it's great.
It's amazing, and I think like you touched on like masters and like the varied levels of I don't want to say varied levels of commitment, but like the varied levels of what they're trying to, the goals, the experience they're trying to have. And I think like I think that can be a struggle at the master's level, is trying to match up the right people with the right people. And that would be the important part about bringing more people into our sport, so that you can expand the teams who want to go out, get a workout, but they want to stop at, like, if there's a blue hair and they want to take a picture, like that type of rowing's okay. And then you can have the people who, like, it's all about getting your race time in and you're getting your practices in, and you're ready to compete, but then being able to accommodate both types of rowers at your club without someone
Mhm.
feeling kind of like left out or feeling like they can't find somebody who matches what they want to do, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about what you do. So I have some questions because I know some of the people from my team are listening now. I'm
All
going to
right.
take advantage of asking you a few questions. Um, I know one of our episodes, I was listening back to them, and one of them you had talked about the athlete that changed her seat. She actually changed the boat, but it was the seat that was causing her to have some back issues.
Yeah.
What are some other things, like things that people can kind of play around with? If you have any tips with that, that some things that you could teach us to
Sure.
maybe try in our boats.
Some of the biggest things that we can do is kind of changing like the setup, like changing how you feel when you head up to the catch. Um, we talked about the seat, and all seats aren't created equal. So a lot of times the boat will come with like either like what they call like a unisex seat, or it's a male seat, and so the holes for your butt bones, basically your ischials, they for men, they tend to be closer together. Women, they tend to be further apart. But that's just kind of like a general rule of thumb. It all depends on like how your body is set up. And I actually was talking to one of the representatives from Croker. Croker
Mhm.
makes a couple different types of seats that you can use either on the erg or put in your boat. And they actually had people sit on florist foam. So,
Hmm.
like the foam that, where you can stick flowers in
Oh
it.
yeah.
They had
Yeah.
people sit on the florist foam and then like rock their bodies back and forth to then
Hmm.
see like where their ischiums were. And then they have a couple different seats. Like, so they have I think they've gotten away from calling them like women's seats versus men's seats, because there is that variability. Some women have narrow hips, and their ischiums are closer together, ischials are closer together. So you can actually get some florist foam, sit on it, rock back and forth, and then you could take the measurement and see if it matches up to the seat that you're using.
Hmm.
If you're having this problem with the numbness down the leg, you can also like you can take some of the seats are sitting on a carriage where you can actually raise the back of the seat. And
Okay.
what this will do is, it like, so you can imagine like a flat seat, and like so then you're like the back of your legs, your back of your thighs, so your hamstring would catch the front of that seat if it's flat. If you tip it, with this being like the back of the seat and then this being like the front where your hamstrings would come in contact, if you tip it, then you take some of the pressure off the hamstrings.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you're having that numbness issue, that might be something that you can do. Now, if you're using a boat that is going to be used between a lot of different people, which is kind of the struggle especially at the masters and the high school level, you're not necessarily rowing in the same boat or
Hmm.
in the same seat every time. So you could get a cushion that can mimic that. I believe I'm not exactly sure if Croker has the angled cushion.
Okay.
Um, what I do is I make the seats out of oh, I wish I had one that I could grab right now. I make them out of the foam that they put underneath carpet.
Oh,
So
okay.
like I make them out of carpet foam, and then I can make them like one carpet foam thick, or I can make them two. Sometimes I make them three. Like three is
Hmm.
pretty thick.
Hmm.
But three would be something like, say you have like an older gentleman who's
Hmm.
rowing, like a three-level cushion might be helpful because that will raise your butt up and it'll change the space between your heel and the seat, which means that you don't have to get into such a tight squat position when you get up to the catch. So like that tends to like, if your back is bothering you, that's always the first thing I look at. I'm like, where, what's the distance between your heel and the
Hmm.
seat? And a lot of
Okay.
times if I increase that distance, it takes you out of that deep compressed squat and gets you into kind of like a more like a not as small squished type of squat. So that's really helpful for people who are having back pain.
Hmm.
It works really, really well on the erg, but doesn't necessarily translate as much to the boat. But my thought for people who are trying to, especially like singles tend to have a very small like heel cup to seat because there's
Hmm.
just not a lot of room. Like you don't have a lot of like in eights tend to be much more comfortable for someone who isn't as flexible because there's going to be more flexibility in where you can put the shoes.
Hmm.
Most eights you can unscrew the middle and like you can move the actual shoe plate down so that your
Hmm.
heels are closer to the bottom of the boat, which then increases the distance between your heel cup and the top of your seat.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, that can be an option. If you're in your single, it's not really an option. But what for people who are in the single, what I have them do is I have them measure from their heel cup to their seat, figure out how many centimeters that is. Sometimes it's like it can be as small as 15 centimeters. So that's like really, really tight. That's a tight squat. Up to like 18 centimeters. It just depends. In some people's seats, you can actually, like the carriage, you can actually make your seat taller and not necessarily need to use a cushion. The more cushions you're using, the less contact you have with the actual boat.
Hmm.
So it becomes like this thing where like you can't feel as connected if you have like a very, very thick cushion on your
Hmm.
seat. However, if you can raise it on the actual carriage, because some of them will let you do that. So then you
Hmm.
can have a little bit more distance between the heel cup and the seat. So that's another common one I tend to do in the boat. Trying to think of what else. Make sure that like, if you're leaning away at all, if you feel it like if like say so you're rowing sweep and you're in a seat that you didn't set the poppers or you don't know what the setup's going to be. If you feel yourself leaning away, a lot of times leaning away is a sign that the riggers or the oarlock is too low.
Okay.
So people lean away to like be able to like kind of cheat and get the blade out.
Hmm.
It's not everyone. Some people just lean away. Like and that can be a sign that potentially your pelvis might be a little out of off balance, or you can end up being shifted also, depending on leg length. Leg length becomes kind of a thing too. I have a client that he had a hip replacement on one side, and so that side for him, like the leg length is even. The doctor made sure that he was even,
Hmm.
but it has a feel that he feels disconnected a little bit on that side, and sometimes it's a little bit of like a twist or a torsion. Like, so meaning like you're not sitting straight on the seat, you might be
Hmm.
sitting a little bit cockeyed. And
Okay.
so just like checking that and making sure that like you're sitting square on the seat. Um, but if you usually don't lean away and you're leaning away, that means your oarlock's too low. You need to let your coach know so that you can put some poppers underneath so you can raise the oarlock up a little bit. Um,
No, you have a YouTube website, right?
Yeah, yeah. So on my YouTube channel, it's actually like kind of like a depository of all the exercises that my
Hmm.
clients have needed. And it's kind of funny. Like if someone told me like 2.5 years ago, you're gonna need to make like 600 videos, I'd be like, oh my God, like how will I do this? But it's really like it's a testament to my how wonderful my clients are.
Mhm.
And it's really like every exercise that you see on there, someone has inspired me to make it. And so like I feel like those videos wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the great people that I've been lucky enough to work with because it's just they inspire creativity in my mind on a particular exercise. Sometimes it's just um, you know, they need something in particular and I'll make the video for it. So there's the way I have it set up is the exercises are on playlists. So there's like a hip list, a knee, ankle. There's rowing specific exercises. I have a couple of my different like presentations and things that I've done. There's a biomechan if you really want to hear me talk about rowing and biomechanics, there's I think it's like the master's seminar from the beginning of this year. I think it's like a solid hour and a half long of me just talking about like different biomechanics stuff about rowing if you want to take a deep dive. Um,
Oh,
feel
there, I'm sure there are people that might
feel
be
free to go check it
interested.
out.
Yeah.
It's on the YouTube channel. So I try to put drills on there. I've got some
Hmm.
different warm-ups. Anything that I can think of, I'll make a video for. I've got some funny videos where I'm using bands to kind of like mimic like sculling on the erg. Like yeah,
Hmm.
all sorts of interesting stuff that people kind of inspired me to think about and make videos for. So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's great to know that that's there. So if anybody's listening and they want to look for Chris, I'm gonna check it out today because I got to stretch. I did a workout this morning and I definitely feel like I need to stretch. So I'm gonna check out your website, your YouTube website, and find some good hip stretches. That's always where I need to stretch.
Yeah. And I think you can just hit in the search bar on a particular channel and you'll be able to search through and find
Mhm.
um, any hip stretch that I may have
Cool.
popped in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. All
I
right. So are we gonna switch to a different topic now?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about your college advising that you're
Yeah.
doing and how maybe some of our high school rowers out there could benefit from being in contact with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't really have an open business right now. I'm kind of doing this as a parent and we'll see where it goes. I'm finding it very challenging to maybe do this at a time when my own child is going through this. I think I'm learning so much that I didn't realize I needed to know, and I think it'll be more valuable once I get through this. Because she potentially, not necessarily, is interested in rowing in college. And so I've been helping her and looking at different resources for that on top of, you know, separately what she's looking for to become a student at a college, because they do go hand in hand in a lot of ways, but in many ways, you want to think about it separately as well. And I've being on a team, I've seen and talked to parents that have had current seniors go through this, older students that have gone through this. And the thing I think it's always important to keep in mind is that every person is different.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is that sometimes people, will share their experiences. I think that's definitely helpful, but it's always important to keep in mind that what works for one rower, athlete, student is not always going to work for another one, because they all have their own journeys to follow. So I think that is kind of where I find where I end up, because my background is in school counseling and now college counseling. So I work with college students in an academic setting. Um, that is definitely separate than what I'm talking about right now, which is more of like searching for a college as a high school student. But the big thing is just like helping people kind of find where they want to go, right? That's the big
Mhm.
message. And just a few things that have been really helpful that I've kind of stumbled upon. And I'll just mention them as like quick tips,
Yeah.
which is right now I share a Google account with Hannah. So that's my student. And she has access to the emails. I have access to the emails. We can both keep track of them because you probably remember this from when your oldest was going through the college search experience. They get bombarded with emails
Mhm.
and mail and all of that. And it's very important to kind of sift through it because some of it's really important that they pay attention to, and others is just a bunch of noise and not that important. So we've been able to kind of come up with some strategies to keep track when coaches reach out to her, making sure that she feels comfortable in how she responds to that and all of that. And I guess I should mention, take a step back, how do they know to reach out to her? So I think there's a couple of options. I've talked to a few other parents. There's a couple other platforms, but we have been using NCSA, which is a service that you can pay for. We did meet with somebody from that service to try and sell us on doing a subscription. We have not done that, and I don't know if we will do the paid version of that service, but the free version does give you a lot of access to a lot of helpful information. It's always appealing to think like, oh yeah, it shows you what you have access to if you have a paid subscription, but at the very least, it does allow you to have a free account, a profile. You can put in a lot of information on the free account. And that's how most coaches have found her
Oh,
and reached out to her. And then on top of that, you don't even need that. You can just fill out recruiting profiles on any college that you're interested in. So, so we keep a running, like on top of the email, we also have on the Google Drive an Excel sheet of every place that she's interested in, looking at, visited, contacts she's made with coaches, and also like what their team is all about too, because that's going to be if she does end up wanting to row, she's got a year and a half left before, well, probably a year before she makes that decision, and a year and a half before she leaves to join that team. Um, she's going to want to find a team that she feels like she wants to be part of, that are going to embrace her, and that are it's going to be a good place for her to be for the next 4 years eventually. So
yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of what where I'm at with that. I was kind of gung-ho about jumping in and doing consulting during like now, but it's just not something that's in the cards for me right now. It's just yeah, I think we'll see. It might come in, but I love talking about it. I love talking about colleges. If anybody ever wants to reach out and talk about that. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now, and that's where we are with that journey. It's been fun. I love visiting colleges. That's like my favorite thing. And I was telling my rowing group, I was like, oh, I'm going somewhere to visit with Hannah, and so they asked me a question, and I said, I'm just glad I have somebody who wants to come with me on these now. Like I would go by myself. I'm just glad she's like got a reason to go now, like other than I guess I could just make an appointment for myself, but I haven't got a good excuse to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I have a question for you. When do
Hmm.
you think, rower or not, like a
Hmm.
like a student in high school, when should they start this process? Like, I mean, should it be the moment that they get to high school that they start thinking and looking and
Mm.
going places, or do you think that they should wait a little bit, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that question. So I would say think bigger picture, not just about college or what college, but just kind of knowing who they are as people and who they're becoming, right? So that's the kind of thing that you can start as early as possible, especially as a parent working with your own kids, because applying to college is going to really take some self-reflection for that person to know who they are, to be
Yeah.
able to write about who they are as a person, and to really get a chance to tell a college like why should they accept you, like what do you have, and who are you, and who are you going to be here on our campus, right? And
Mhm.
that is such a hard thing for a young person to do, especially when we're asking them to talk about how they are as a unique person, and all they want to do when they're a high schooler is to just fit in and not be unique. A lot of times, right? Some of them are
Yeah.
very comfortable being unique, but for the most part, like generalizing teens, they spend a lot of effort trying to fit in. So I think if you're a parent and you have, eighth, ninth, 10th grader who's going to be going through this process, I think the more you can do to really just encourage them to think about what they're good at, what their interests are. And then, it's kind of nice to, if you're going on vacation, if you're going to be visiting in a location, drive by a college campus, stop in. We did that last spring where we kind of just I called it taste testing. Like we stopped and got a coffee at one campus. Then the next
Oh,
one
cool.
we stopped in a little town next to another college and had dinner. And then like went to for rowing. I mean, that was kind of fun. We went to a place where a bunch of teams row out of and watched them have practice. And we just kind of like got our feet wet in the whole process. So I think it's also something that you do kind of have to see how your kid reacts to that too, because I think different kids are di at different levels of readiness with this. There some might be really excited about it and some might be very hesitant about it. So I think part of it is kind of letting them to some extent like lead that conversation and be open to it. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question. I know
Oh
it's
yeah,
very
definitely.
dependent, but I don't think it's too early to start making like small steps in that way that
Hmm.
will eventually lead them to be able to have that mindset of like, where do I want to spend the next 4 years, right? If I even want to, right? Like I think keeping that door open, that me as somebody who works with college students, you know, you have to want to be there when you're
Exactly.
taking these hard classes. I work with engineering students and I have to remind them sometimes, like, you don't have to be here. Like, you have to remember, why are you here? That you have to want this in order for this to work. So like reminding them also that hopefully that is something that your family, is willing to challenge that notion that, maybe my kid might not want to go to college, even if they're really smart,
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of options for people. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
amazing. I love that tip about just stopping and like going into the campus and just like grabbing a coffee. Like I
Hmm.
think that's like such a nice little point of entry because a lot of these tours, now that I've done a bunch with my oldest and I'm starting now with my second oldest, like it can be really overwhelming to really
Hmm.
do the whole thing and walk the
Yeah.
whole and see the dorms and see the different classrooms and all the different information. Is just like information overload. So that's
Right.
a great tip, especially for a kid who maybe gets overwhelmed by all of that.
Hmm.
Maybe just going over to, maybe it's a local college or like you said, when you're on vacation, just like, oh, we're just gonna stop and we're gonna find their nice little coffee place and
Hmm.
grab a coffee, walk around, and then leave. And not necessarily have to have it be this serious thing where they get the drawstring bag and the water bottle and the this and the that
Yeah.
and the cheering and the going into seeing things. It's just, yeah, it can be a lot.
Yeah, I think the other thing, because I used to work in college admissions years ago, and I do work quite a bit with admissions right now and meeting with prospective students. And there's kind of two things that I say, like the more admission marketing side of college admissions, I think there is value in that. There is importance to that. Like I love going to open houses and hearing what they have to sell and
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say. This is your best foot forward.
Mhm.
But I also think like the secret shopping side of it is really helpful too.
Mhm.
Like grabbing a coffee and seeing a table of people next to you, and that can be hard, but asking them like, well, what do you like about going to school here? Or, you know, what don't you like about going to school here? Or seeing a
Yeah.
faculty and asking them those questions. But I think you got to keep the perspective in mind too, because as somebody who works for a college, I would always say admissions is always going to give you the answer that they can give you because that's their job, right? Like
Yep.
they're not going to be as upcoming or forthcoming about, maybe like the downsides of that place or some place students that maybe wouldn't be as, successful or wouldn't feel fit like they fit in as well.
Mhm.
But on the opposite side, the secret shopping aspect of that, you could be asking somebody that is having a bad day, they just got a bad exam grade,
Yeah.
maybe they're a faculty who just got turned down for some research proposal that they put in. So you really have to keep all that in mind too, that if you're doing the secret shopping, keep that perspective in check, because that's not going to give you a perspective of everybody on that campus, right? That's just kind of giving you some kind of insight for that one particular person. But it can also lead to some really interesting conversations. I usually like the more positive responses, I think, are going to be actually very helpful. Whereas with admissions, ask them a challenging question, like, what's the worst part about this place? Or what do students complain about the most? And see how
Yeah.
they answer it, because that can give you a lot of information too. So yeah, sorry, I could get on a tangent about all of this because I love this stuff, but
No, that's
yeah.
amazing. Like we'll have to have more talks about this because I
Mhm,
think like especially the rowing moms out there and the rowing dads who have kids who are coming up on this, like getting some tips, and I mean that it's just so helpful because especially like after doing the process with my first, I was
mhm,
like, "Oh my gosh, this is extremely involved."
yeah.
And there's so many schools out there, so many options, and trying to find the right fit, and then on top of it trying to manage like, okay, my kid's going to play a sport. So like,
Mhm,
what do I do? How do I affect making this an effective experience for them, make it be fun, make it be
mhm,
a team that they want to be a part of.
yeah.
And even and maybe we can get into like I get there and oh boy, like this is not the rowing experience I expected. And then having
Mhm,
to make that decision too. We can talk about that
yeah.
on one of the podcasts about how do you then change your identity too? Because I mean, there's a lot of identity that kind of gets wrapped up in rowing.
Yeah,
But
that's for sure. Yeah. I know you and I kind of went through that to some
mhm,
extent. We had some changes that we went through at UB, and
coaching
yeah, we could,
coaches and
yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
so that can
Yeah.
you show up thinking you're going to have one coach and then you
Hmm.
end up having another and another. We had quite a few
Yeah.
coaches. We had
Right.
coaches. But
Yeah.
I think that might be a good topic too,
Hmm.
like changing of the guard and how to handle one coach versus another. And
Hmm.
so we have a lot of topics that
Oh
we
yeah.
can touch upon. And if anyone's out there listening and you want to hear something in particular from us, now that you kind of know what we both do outside of the podcast and beside being friends,
Hmm.
so please write us a note, leave a comment on the
Hmm.
podcast, and yeah, we'll try to do some podcasts that talk about those different things.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and thank you for listening. We're
Yeah.
so excited that now that we know, it's like Adrian said, it's a little nerve-wracking to know now that people are listening. Like that's what we wanted, but it's real. But we love any kind of feedback. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And if you want to come on our podcast, let us know.
mhm.
Our doors are open and you can come become one of our rowing friends.